Radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right. Good evening, Fade to Black. Today is Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. And tonight our guest is Adam Apollo. And we're going to have a great conversation tonight, especially after the great Twitter crash of 2023. The panic is over. Most of it, there's still some glitches, but wow, that was pretty amazing. Earlier today, I was here in the bunker, just getting a lot of stuff done. We've got some things that we're doing this weekend. And suddenly I got a warning that I had reached my Twitter limit. And I'm thinking, I've got social media managers and people that run my stuff. And I was like, how much tweeting have they done today? And I go and look, and then TweetDeck started acting funky, and that was weird. And I tried to, I closed out TweetDeck and refired it up, and it wouldn't let me do it. It was locked in the login screen and looping through. And I thought, wow, that's kind of weird. Did somebody hack my account? I didn't know that there was a problem with Twitter. So anyway, to make a very long story short, as I started to go through this and signed out and signed in and just confirmed everything, then I couldn't even go in and look at my account details to see, maybe was I suspended or something? And I go over to Down Detector, and it guided me over to another program, and then to Facebook and a few others, Instagram and a couple of gaming systems. And I was looking at the comments from everybody, and it was like a worldwide something. I don't know if this was a server farm, and will they announce this, and will they talk about it? Is there going to be a reporter that is going to dig into this and find out what happened today? But it all went down at about 2:15. And our guest tonight is Adam Apollo. And Adam is one of the smartest people that I know. And I say that about every guest because most of my guests are very smart. And I look up to them for their brain power. But Adam falls into that category. But he's also, to me, a bit strange when it comes to social media, when he fully understands the internet and the future of technology. So I'm rather interested if he was even aware of any of this today. And with that, I get to hang out with Adam this weekend. And he's here in town from a secret location. Here we go. Adam Apollo in the house. Adam, how you doing, my brother?
I'm doing great, Jimmy. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be back with you on the show.
What happened? It's great to see you. It's great to see you. And we're going to be hanging out all weekend. We'll swing back to that. But what happened with platforms in the internet today? Do you have any insight?
Well, I was tracking a completely different front. Google and Microsoft both today on the news announced essentially AI integrations to their search at a deeper level, let's just say. Google's been doing this for a long time, but they're having multi-search at the moment, where the idea is that you could search by image or by text or by voice or by whatever you want, down to the point where you could just have your camera on your phone out and essentially take a picture or a short video of something and ask it a question. Hey, can I find another thing like this? Or can I buy this somewhere? And it would find things that look like that or that match that description. Bing is a little bit more on the front of essentially conversational AI, which is the whole front that's making everybody go crazy over ChatGPT, where you can literally have a conversation with it. You can ask it to tell you a story. You can ask it to make up a story. You can have it give you a bunch of facts and a bunch of fiction if you want. And so they're both, the race, we could say, for AI dominance is really just beginning in these spaces, and I think that's fascinating. I missed what you were saying about other platforms, though.
Well, Twitter crashed today.
Right.
And there were glitches and issues across multiple social media platforms, all happening at about 2:15.
Well, centralization is the problem there, isn't it? Right? Because as we know, as long as you have giant centralized server farms, the whole thing can go down.
That's right.
All of the stuff that you've created can be gone in an instant if those servers go out.
I used to run this live. I did it for maybe a couple of weeks on my website because I just found it fascinating. I've got to go back and I've got it saved. There is a real-time global internet traffic map that you can look at, right? And it's a globe, and you can see all the pipelines over Europe to the United States and so forth, right? You can watch the traffic and the hubs where they're at. And I gotta say, it's kind of like watching paint dry. You're just looking at it. But this is what's crazy about it. Really, honestly, there's only like 2 or 3. I mean, there are thousands and millions of internet pipelines. I'm not referring to that, but there are just a couple main ones that go from Asia to here, from here to Europe, and then throughout the United States. And then, you've got Africa in there, and you've got South America. But I mean, one that goes around the world and goes through the United States, and then it crisscrosses and interconnects, like in Kansas. It's out there somewhere. But anyway, if anything happened to one of those 2 points, this thing shuts down, man. I mean, the world shuts down. I mean, I don't know what the alternative would be. Does that kind of thought? Do you spend time thinking about something that serious?
Well, in this case, I have thought about this. There are main central pipes that run, like the transatlantic cable, for example, which is like this massive bundle of cables that goes under the Atlantic Ocean. There are major lines that could go down, but at this point, those lines are all augmented by many smaller lines going different routes. So even if you're trying to make a connection with an IP server in Europe, for example, somebody's got a website in Europe and they host there. If you can't go across the Atlantic from the United States, you could actually go other directions. Essentially the signal would be rerouted through Asia and through, all of Russia, for example, and then back down into those areas of Europe, or would leverage existing augmentation of satellite networks where the satellite network would bounce the signal. So I think we're at the point that there is no central point of failure for at least the routing, the communications routing that we have. And I tend to be a proponent against really dwelling on the idea of like, what if everything all goes down tomorrow and we're back in the dark ages? Because I'll be honest with you, humans are pretty dang resilient, and being a burner and having experienced the most insane, nightmarish collapses of infrastructure over and over again out in the middle of the desert, and watching people literally collaborate, work together, pull in new resources, connect with new people, bring in new stuff, and be back set up within a matter of hours is always amazing to me. So I know that we'll always have ways through, and I don't believe that we're headed towards another dark age. Frankly, I believe that we're headed towards the age of humanity being part of a galactic civilization.
I'm with you on that. My pockets have flowers hanging out of them. It's only it's when you it's the the internet and cabling and fiber optic cables and transoceanic communications, and we have redundancy built in, and we've got sound, but that's all basic stuff that we have installed, that we are in control of. The chaos, the potential of chaos coming out of all of that, well, at least we created that chaos, right? So there's it's the stuff that's out of your control, right? A massive EMP, some kind of solar burst, or a comet or an asteroid.
Do these keep you up at night, Jimmy? I mean, do these bug you?
No, they don't. But those are the things that we don't have in our control, right? That's just, and the potential.
That's my Bengal, and he's been extremely talkative today. So forgive him if he.
It's totally cool. Totally cool. Love it. It's the stuff that we don't have in our control, and if it did come in, the Stone Age idea. And it's that kind of reset. It's happened so many times. I mean, over and over again. But then we had this report out of China last week that the Earth's inner core had stopped spinning and possibly reversed directions. Now that's again, it's just like what, and that's not in our control, but. It seems, with the collective knowledge that we have built, that protects our planet, right? Creates an invisible shield against ultraviolet rays and other things around our planet. And if that stops spinning, does that mean our defense systems drop? And is it something else? And would it affect GPS and compass systems and everything else? But it's really weird. Nothing has happened yet, except, we did have this massive earthquake in Turkey, which was another thought that I had. The Earth's inner core stopping its spin, is that something to be concerned about?
Well, yes, definitely. Though I'm not sure I agree with the theories that the Earth's core is stopping spinning. I mean, it's rough analysis based on plate tectonics that are the only thing that can give us any kind of insight down to that level. Right. But if you deal with it from a physics standpoint or a physics front, then you start to see that the structure of the planet and the structure of space-time itself is operating in a way that doesn't just kind of slow down and stop on occasion just because it wants to and turn the other way. Like planets that go for, millions and millions of years, hundreds of millions of years sometimes. And they're orbiting stars. And a lot of this comes down to one of the biggest, most fundamental questions in physics, which is one of my passions. And that is it stuff that's just floating around in an empty vacuum? Or is the structure of space-time itself a tangible structure of energy? In other words, is it discrete, is the word we use in physics? And in that case, if that's true, then suddenly, if space-time is this highly energetic lattice in tensegrity that's co-moving together in all kinds of ways, then suddenly you don't need dark matter anymore, because suddenly we have the answer is that the hidden energy, the energy that we can't find, the mass we can't find, is actually space-time moving. It's the structure of space itself that has mass energy, and that moving is the hidden dark energy. It is the hidden dark matter, right? And if space-time itself is the thing that's moving, then what happens is when you start to look at stars and at planets, those are extensions of a much larger vortex of space-time that's moving. So the entire solar system is this massive vortice that's moving and rotating. And essentially, as you go down to the point of the star itself, or get down to planets themselves, then what's happening is space is all co-moving. So as you get down to the core of a planet, that whirlpool structure of space spinning, flowing into that state of matter is not something that's just going to like pause and reverse itself. It won't. However, you will have certain periods of time where the magnetosphere goes through different polarity reversals. And that's what we see very clearly on the bottom of the ocean. Essentially, magnetosphere polarity reversals occurring very periodically, and we're overdue for one of those. So, why that pole reversal happens, why that polarity reversal is a bit of a mystery to science and geology, but it makes sense if you look from a unified physics perspective and you realize that everything, all energy in space-time has yin and yang polarities. It's going to flip polarity at some point, no matter what you do. Like, that's just part of nature.
Right.
And
And
there's
so
natural
when
processes unfolding.
so when this report came out, does it, because this is part of your research. I've seen your presentations. I know what and I've
Sure.
seen this. And for sure, this caught your attention, like your cat has, by the way, and it's being demanded that the cat gets shown on the air.
Yeah, I know
So-
everybody always was. It's a really cute cat. So if he comes
It's a
back over
Bengal.
here, I'll shove
it's
him
a-
up in the camera.
It's a Bengal.
Yeah, he's a snow Bengal. So
Oh man,
they're
yeah.
beauties. They're like
That's-
genetically miniature jaguars, and he looks like a snow leopard with like ice blue eyes. He's a beauty.
Did you see the? I think the Nat Geo picture of the year. Did you see it today?
No,
Snow leopard.
really,
Yeah. It's
Nice.
it's bleeping incredible.
straight out of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, huh?
Man, you know what? I don't want to get too off on a tangent. That movie is fantastic.
I love that movie.
Yeah, that movie
So
is
good.
fantastic. The new one, well, the original one's cool too as well, but the Ben Stiller one, man, it's pretty cool. And
Agreed.
the whole David Bowie thing, them playing in that bar in Iceland was just incredible. Okay, anyway. That's too far of a segue. Let's get back here. Bengal cats, snow leopards, dark matter. So when this has always been a part of your research, but here's the thing. I understand the ability to measure stuff emanating from both poles out into space and magnetics and electromagnetics and things. That's easy to do. When you go in the other direction, into the earth, right? And certainly trying to learn how the earth is made up and what is at its core when we've only drilled a mile or two down. We haven't gone very far, and it gets hot very quickly, right?
Yeah.
So how do we really know that this report that came out is based on any type of fact at all? I mean, how do we really know what is at the center of the earth?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I'm not a geologist, but I have some good friends who are, and people like Robert Schock and I have had a lot of conversations about both, geology in relationship to archaeology and ancient cultures, as well as addressing some of the deeper mysteries in geology, and it is, to some extent, it's a pattern recognition game. So when you look at canyons and you look at mountains and you look at different kinds of rocks, it's recognizing and looking at, under these conditions, in this kind of state, we get this kind of material, we get this kind of rock, we get this kind of, structure. And there's a pattern recognition that every time there's a volcano, liquid rock comes out of the ground, that we call magma, and then lava, of course, on the surface. And so we know there's hot molten rock under the ground. And then when you start to apply the sort of physics of this from the standpoint of other macrocosmic and microcosmic approaches, you realize, okay, it's mass energy, and mass energy aggregates and becomes more and more dense towards the core of large objects. It comes down to really planetary creation theory. That's how we know about the inside of the Earth. It's not because we just can look down and see what the heck is going on. It's because we say, okay, you've got stars, you've got a bunch of dust, these things accrete into disks and then form spheres, and then there's a compression and etc. But even all of that, by the way, the mainstream theory around all of that is still got huge holes in it, because there's nothing that suggests why a little bundle of dust would eventually grow to be the size of a planet. There's really zero reason for that to happen, because there's plenty of dust clouds and plenty of little meteorites, and they never aggregate together, right?
Yeah,
and
look
so
at
this is
Saturn.
where
Look at Saturn,
yeah,
right? Saturn's got the last time I checked, it's got a couple of rings, right?
Yeah.
that have been there for just as long as planet Earth has been around, right? Or our solar system. Yeah, exactly. And so this,
the reason I bring this up is because all of that points to the fact that with there being zero answer to that question, the idea that space-time forming a vortex is what causes the aggregation of matter has a lot of strength to it. And that's the idea that space is the thing that's moving, and thus, everything's going to aggregate around that. But what's really cool about that is then when you start to look at the Earth, it doesn't even look like what we learned in school. You get the mantle, you get the inner core, you start to get the crystallized metal, but then you go into basically super high coherency crystal structures that essentially look like an event horizon. And you get to the point where this mass energy is so compact and so aligned and so perfectly dialed, and the curvature around it is so dialed that essentially you get a black hole in the center of the planet. And so I think Nassim is absolutely correct on that front, and he's the first person who postulated that idea. But there's a huge amount of work and research and physics that backs that idea really clearly now. And that's like, that engine is not going to just stop.
No,
that's a serious engine.
So in Brian Greene's new book, right?
Yeah.
It's just like a paragraph, okay? But I haven't talked about it. There's this paragraph that sticks in my head. It's mind blowing. He goes, it's possible that one day another planet or another star could whiz by our sun, throw off everything, and fling Earth out into space, right? And that's it. And so we're just floating through space without our sun anymore, our star, and we become a rogue planet. And then he says, but life won't end. He said, it's going to be cold on the surface of the Earth.
Sure.
But the core of our planet is going to be burning for a very long time, for billions of years. And the Earth's oceans are going to be nice and warm, and there's going to be all kinds of stuff living there as we just float through space. And it just kind of messed with my head to think about it in those terms, and that you're right, that we have an energy source at the center of our planet that is, it's not quite fusion in the sun, but it's going to stay running for billions of years.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty an amazing idea, and a frightening one to imagine a star, essentially passing through the space somewhere between the sun and some other planets in our solar system and just grabbing all those balls and probably not even sending them flying, most likely capturing them into a larger gravitational well. And then who knows what the whole thing would look like. But how often does this happen? Really, really uncertain, because, I think that there's likely a very fine balance to the gravitational dance that stars go through in the areas they form within a galaxy. And honestly, I believe there's a level of sort of mediation of that kind of rogue star flying across the galaxy, that doesn't happen so much because the whole galaxy is in a coherent state with groups of stars traveling in spiral dynamic loops around the entire thing, essentially moving around the core. I think the whole galaxy is in a greater state of coherence in general than would allow that. But still, Brian's thought exercise is brilliant and amazing. And if Earth got thrown off, it might on the surface look like one of the planets that, like Titan or some others where they're like completely covered in ice, and it's just like a giant icy surface. The whole atmosphere would turn to ice around this planet. But underneath that, down in the oceans, down in the volcanic canyons, there would still be life. There would still be things going on. And that is a great case for life in the galaxy for sure.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. See, the last thing standing, octopus, which is alien to begin with, right?
Exactly.
So now, okay, so let's get back to dark matter for a second. I think that dark matter is convenient. Right? That's all. You know what I mean? I think it's convenient because there is so much unanswered. Especially what has gone down in the last 25 to 30 years with the expanding universe that was supposed to be contracting or eventually contract, and gravity would overtake everything. We would expand, stop, shrink back up, wash, rinse, repeat. We'll do another big bang, right? That was kind of, that was the orthodox, right? That was the paradox. That was, that we would shrink and expand, but that all changed in 1995, and it's not only expanding, but it is increasing in its expansion to the point where it's exceeding the speed of light at the edges of the observable universe. Now that's a pretty crazy thought. Now, what's causing this reversal of gravity? And then dark matter gets introduced, and suddenly you can't see it, can't measure it, don't know what it is. We don't have any facts about it, but it's 95% of everything, and it's pushing it apart. I think it's convenient because those physicists and theoretical physicists and astrophysicists don't have an answer, and this fills in the blanks where you have all those question marks and algorithms.
Yeah, I mean it's an equation fit, and that it happens all the time. It's happened many times in quantum chromodynamics, for example, which is a field of quantum mechanics and quantum physics where specific forces are applied and say that they exist simply because there must be that force that exists. Or like, for example, the W and Z bosons that radiate off of a neutron whenever a neutron is free floating. So there are no free floating neutrons in the universe because within split seconds, they go through essentially a decay process. This is like connected to the weak force, and you get a W and Z boson that fly off of these things. But what the heck is a W and Z boson? Nobody's ever seen a W or Z boson. Nobody's ever measured a W or Z boson. It's just the measure of the amount of energy change that neutron goes through and its return to a proton. Which is why, like in my weak force paper, I propose there is no such thing as a neutron and that they're just protons, and it's actually just a state shift. It's a polarity shift that occurs when the proton is actually been bound to other protons, sharing spin, in which case they have conservation of spin. So they have less positive charge overall when they're all bound together in a nucleus. But when you try to free one of those up, you think it's a neutron because it's sharing its spin with the others. But then all of a sudden, it's catching its own field of space-time, pulling all this energy around it. And as that happens, we see that energy suddenly move around it, and we call that a W or Z boson, right? So this is the same thing with dark matter, is like, oh, well, obviously these galaxies are rotating, but it doesn't make sense that it holds itself together this well. There must be more mass. There must be more matter somewhere that's keeping all of these stars together in this giant thing. It just, that's the question mark. And then it's like, well, how much energy would it need for it to actually stick together like this theoretically? And that amount of energy is the exact energy that that's the exact amount of mass that we call dark matter, right? And then the same question with the universe expansion. Well, that would require a lot of energy pushing against all the gravity wells, right? So how much energy is that? You get a number, and we say that's the dark energy of the universe equals that number. So we're just fitting a label to a hole in an equation that doesn't have a clear answer.
That's right.
It's important to just drop that down. It's no offense to physicists. It's just saying that's the way that we've actually theoretically conceptualized this.
Now, there are physicists out there that, again, conveniently say things. I think it's very loose, too, how they do this. They do it too freely. Well, it's called dark matter because it doesn't have light. Well, no, duh. Okay.
You can't see it. You can't touch it. You can't smell it. It exists, though, I promise.
Let's call it dark. And that's it's too simplistic. Maybe it is that simple.
Yeah.
Maybe it just is that simple. But I think that they know less about it, if nothing at all. Right. And so they're plugging those holes that you're talking about. I see it. And I hear the way it's spoken about and presented. And I see the visuals on how it's presented. And it just seems to me that they really don't know anything. And it's a convenient term. Look, we have strong and weak forces, right? We have 2 or 3 different types of gravity that are doing different things, right? You have things that are holding atoms together. All right, we understand that, right? And there's a certain amount of energy there. Then you can expand out. We have the gravity that's keeping us glued to the planet. We have the gravity that's keeping our planet to the sun. We have the gravity that's keeping the spiral together in the Milky Way. And then when you bounce out from beyond that and you look at the universe, you have the expansion that is going there, and something else is moving stuff around. And it just may be as simple as that, but labeling it as dark matter, no. Now, there's the reason for this. Why would gravity reverse itself? Or is it not reversing itself, and this is just the process of expansion that is, has gone on since the beginning of everything in the Big Bang?
Yeah, well, first of all, gravity is just space-time curvature. That's Einstein's work. It's proven over and over and over again. So when space-time is in curvature, light and mass follow the curvature of that flow of space-time, right?
Is that the same at the atomic level when things are held together?
It is. It is.
Okay. Fair enough.
But the problem is that the way we understand gravity right now is that we've had trouble establishing a quantum, microcosmic, little tiny framework for how gravity works. I mean, there's been proposed things like the graviton, for example. But some of the best work in that space was done by Lee Smolin and his friends back in the 80s, who created essentially an equation for how quantum gravity could operate. And all it did was extend the idea that space-time curves around centers of mass, right? So, the planet is a giant sphere. It's curved space-time. And around it is atmospheric curvature. Around it is space curvature. And the curvature that it's causing is strong enough to keep the moon in its little pool, right, of orbit.
Now, is that...
And the sun's curvature is strong enough to keep all the planets in it.
Correct. Right? Okay, so I want to show you this comment here. Again, misunderstood, right? So String Gene says, gravity is a pushing force, not an attracting force.
It's kind of neither. It's not push and it's not an attraction. It's literally the structure of space-time in a certain geometry. Okay? And if we extrapolate that further and we keep going, then what we would say is that where does the curve start? The curve starts in a unit of mass. And so a unit of mass, what's the most simple, basic unit of mass? A proton. So, and what is a proton? Nobody knows what the heck a proton is. It's a little curved bundle of energy that somehow lasts the lifetime of an entire universe. In fact, we postulate the half-life of a proton is 4 times the lifetime of the entire universe. So literally, these are the most sustainable objects that exist. They do not decay. They exist forever. And so the question that I proposed years ago was, well, if that's the case, then there's got to be something very special about the proton that lets it be that, amazing longevity, object, an object that literally is the source of all mass, the source of all gravitation and all curvature. And when you get down to it, it's really quite simple. It's space-time in a spherical geodesic form. In other words, it's fully curved space-time. It's fully curved quantum vacuum fluctuations. It's a fully curved geodesic of tensegrity of energy interconnected with itself. And so now, suddenly, you have electromagnetism, which forms the quantum plenum, in other words, the fabric of space, the quantum vacuum, the Planck scale structure, which was Lee Smolin and those guys' proposal that space-time is an energetic structure, and it is made of light. It is electromagnetic in nature, right? So you've got electromagnetic energy forming a spherical bundle, and now suddenly this spherical bundle of electromagnetic energy has an effect upon itself that draws things towards it, i.e. gravity, right?
Is that where the energy? Okay.
Although so this is unification of electromagnetism and gravity. That's where we'll start. But then, of course, the strong force and the weak force just fall right in line with this.
So we're talking about the fundamentals, right? And so when we discuss this, how does it have an infinite energy source? Now, there are some theoretical physicists that, you said 4 times the life of the universe. There are some that are saying 100 trillion years, but that eventually even protons will disintegrate and come apart. And at that point,
supposedly, we've never seen one do it. That's the problem. Ever.
So where does the infinite energy come from?
Well, it's not really that it's not about saying it's infinite energy, it's stability, right? So space-time itself, if it's an energetic structure, which is what everything has been proposing for a long time, which quantum mechanics and quantum theory itself said what a lot of people have heard out there already, which is that, oh my God, if space-time is actually a quantum electromagnetic field, there should be so much energy in it that you could literally contain the entire energy of all visible objects in the entire universe in a cubic centimeter of empty space. That's how much energy should be there. And that's what's known as the vacuum catastrophe, right? Feel free to look this up, anybody who's out there. And so that was like, oh, maybe something's massively wrong with our equations. And so there became a lot of abstractions to kind of bypass this big issue and to say, oh, well, maybe if we just, because that goes infinite or because that goes to too much energy, we just need to just pretend it's not there. But here's the thing, it is there. It's just that space-time is in a state that is in high stability. Buckminster Fuller would call it tensegrity, where there's a balance between a push and a pull. And when that push and pull are in perfect balance and perfect harmony, the force doesn't ever express itself. It doesn't come out. It stays in balance, right? So you've got this lattice of space-time that's all in balance with itself. And then what happens is you get that thing curving around a singularity, a little tiny singularity, a little tiny vortex in space-time, a whirlpool in space-time, you could think of it. And around that, all of the space-time curves and curves and curves until it forms this full geodesic sphere, a multi-layered sphere that, and when I say geodesic, what I'm talking about is like when you're in a dome, when you're looking at the ceiling and the structure of the dome, the triangles.
Yes.
That's a geodesic, right?
Right.
And it turns out that this structure, when you make a sphere out of it, it's also got 2 polar vortices, so it's perfect for something spinning around a pole, and it's also got 5 upper pentagonal vortices and 5 lower pentagonal vortices. And guess what? They're all exactly equidistant from each other and from the core, so it's forming a vector equilibrium, right? And a lot of people these days are like, oh my God, the vector equilibrium, like that's the answer, that's the key, that's the whole thing. But it's actually the vector equilibrium as a geodesic. That's the answer. It's as a proton. And what we're really getting at here is that the curvature of space-time that forms a proton forms a level of a crystalline energetic structure that is so stable it never breaks down. It is so stable that it lasts potentially forever, potentially lifetimes of this universe. And it's also so coherent that the way it's spinning, where it reaches, when the equator of the spin of this object reaches the speed of light, it now is shearing space-time. And so the proton itself is actually acting like a little miniature starship.
Okay, so
And
what
if you come to
is-
my talk at Conscious Life Expo, I'm going to be getting into this because it's part of the heart of starship engineering itself.
we're not leaving this. We're going to stay right here. But this is my question for the vortice and for the equilibrium for the 2 point. Do you need Do you need mass at some point for that?
Well, that's the thing. There is no such thing as mass. Mass doesn't really exist, right? Mass is formed from space-time in a coherent, stable geodesic form that operates as its own individualized entity. Now, suddenly, that thing has relationships with other things. In other words, protons having relationships with other protons. And now that has an influence on space-time. So if you try to push that thing, or you try to zap that thing with a laser, you try to do things with it, it resists and it has feedback. That's what we call mass. It's actually the resistance and the feedback from this bundle of space-time that gives us this perception of mass. And thus aggregated creates gravitation as well.
Okay, I'm there. I've seen your presentation, so I kind of got a little bit of an inside track on this, and we've talked about this before too. You know, pretty in depth. But
I go off
where I have to stop and ask for these particles to interact.
Yes.
In a geodesic fashion, and to attract the vortices and the it seems like they would have to have a reason to get together. So what there isn't a mass or something centralized with this? What is attracting them to each other?
Well, you know, for example, in the center of a star, what happens is all the helium atoms, which are individual protons floating around, right? They find themselves so intensely compressed together from all the energy, right? And they're all spinning independently and trying to be like, I'm my own being, you know, don't mess with me. Don't come into my space. But then they get pushed and pushed and pushed. And so they try to find where is the best place for them to connect. And the best place for them to connect is, as you can imagine, spinning balls, right? Where can they touch that they don't immediately shoot each other off?
That's right.
If they spin the same direction and they align on the poles, then they can literally touch, and 2 spinning balls can touch at the poles and nothing happens. They just perfectly, you know, slot together, right?
But they do that with gravity and mass, though.
Well, in this case, what we're literally going before the description of gravity, or before the description of mass. And what we would say bonds in this fusion moment of, you know, 2 protons together, 2 helium atoms together, what bonds them we call the strong force, right? The Yukawa potential.
That's
but
right.
that strong force influence only exists in certain regions of the proton and only within a certain distance. So this is part of the key, is that these little spaceships that are flying around, they have to line up just right. And when they do, and they line up, they can link together. And then once they're linked, once they're bonded like that, they're spinning together and they're co-moving space-time, they can move more space-time, so more electron field, more electrical field moving, right?
Right.
But they also carry a greater influence on other objects. In other words, there's more mass. The atomic number goes up, there's more mass. But how do you get carbon? How do you get, our bodies and iron and all the heavy elements that make up this whole planet that you see? Well, all of that happens when a star goes supernova and the entire thing collapses on itself. And when it does, when it collapses inward, it's literally like a hyper bonding experience for all of the protons in there. It's like a poly orgy dating fest gone wild, where literally all the protons are now bonding into new configurations with other protons all at the same time, and then being blasted out across the galactic vacuum to essentially form planets and, stars. And that's where you get all these heavier elements and heavier forms of mass. It's literally just from these moments of ecstatic union that these protons go through.
When I hear about, 0 point energy and some of these other, I'm going to say fringe, because I'm not fully on board with those concepts.
Sure.
But there must be, when you go down to particle level forces and what is happening there, and the particles that make up everything in this universe are 13.8 billion years old. Let's not let that idea go. There's energy that has been keeping this together for 13.8 billion years, and will continue to do that for trillions of years. Yeah. That has to be accessible. And wouldn't ET understand that, what these forces are, and then turn around and use this for the energy needed to, fold space, bend space, or wormholes, or whatever else you would need to go from one point to another?
Absolutely. I mean, you have to look at a civilization as a process of witnessing its environment and coming to understand the patterns within it. So where are we at? Well, we're just at the point where we understood enough that we realized that how we form language and ideas is a pattern. And then we figured out we can build a model of that pattern, and then we can actually run that model. And suddenly it seems like there's another intelligence talking to us, because we're duplicating the model of our own language and thought form and thought process, right? This is a pretty cool stage in human development. Now, if you look at a galactic civilization, what they've done is they understand the patterns that have occurred within the stars that have formed their star system. They understand that there's patterns that formed all the mass and the matter of the planets. They understand that gravity has particular patterns and geometry. Electromagnetism has patterns and geometry. And when you learn how to operate and communicate to those patterns, now suddenly you have the ability to control gravity, just like we control electromagnetism right now, like we're doing on this
barely.
Session.
Here's how far we've come. Seriously, you ready?
Go.
That's it. That's
butane and a spark, right?
That's right. That's how we get to the moon, right?
It really is. It really is. I'm sure you've heard my joke about that.
Yes, I have. Yeah. I did that for you. But when you think about it, between 1900 and 2023, right? It's just 100 years in the galactic scale. It's absolutely nothing. So truly, to ET, that's man. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's it. That's
good job, guys. You learned how to light the fuse and ride the bomb. Good job.
Fireworks. But yeah, continue with this, because One of the points that I like to make on this show, and I know it's kind of insulting to a lot of people, but really you just need to understand this, and it's our ability to understand something like this audience. What's our level of understanding? Because if we go back, time machine, you go back 50,000 years, and the level of understanding to Neanderthal, they wouldn't understand this concept. We laugh about it now. This is shamanic voodoo stuff, right? This is black magic. And they wouldn't understand, a very simple concept like that. But it's the same brain, right? It's the same brain. Yeah. It's the ability to understand. So where we are right now, ET shows up and tries to explain to us how to fold space, and it's done really simply. You just take, right? Well, we wouldn't have the ability to understand that right now, or would we?
Well, I mean, that's part of my work. That's what I'm here for, and others like me who are essentially trying to help build a bridge, help to communicate some of the concepts, the understandings, the physics, the philosophy, and help people actually ground the science of how a galactic culture civilization could work. Because to be honest, Jimmy, I love Conscious Life Expo, and there's a lot of woo around. And when I say woo, I mean like woo. Like, yeah, I listen to some talks and it's like, okay, great. It's great. Good that you're talking to spirits, and good that you're channeling, and good that you hung out with your grandma who passed away 10 years ago, and great that you're starting to have contact with other, extraterrestrial beings that know telepathy and things like that. But there's a lot of lack of discernment and grounding. And discernment and grounding is critical for us to actually stabilize this knowledge. Because as long as it's fringe, as long as it's edge, as long as it's just, those crazy peeps, that go to these, conferences or whatever, it's not going to land well in terms of the entire civilization actually taking advantage of the gifts of this knowledge. I mean, we are in a point in time where the possibility to integrate all of the incredible ancient wisdom and knowledge that we've had for thousands and thousands of years, as well as take our physics further and not just be able to, say, control an electromagnetic field to create a laser light that can shine really sharp, or, light up a monitor that you're looking at, or light your house, or those kinds of things, but actually apply gravitational physics and torsion physics to not just turning the wheels on your car to move you, but instead to actually turn the structure of space-time in a way that lets you move much, much, much faster. And not just much faster, but instantaneously in some cases. And a lot of the really, really exciting stuff about this work is understanding the implications. I mean, Jimmy, imagine you could go out to your car, but instead of like you get in your car and you go to your local store, or you go hang out with your friends that are locally, you could literally get in your car, cruise up to a nearby, like, transstellar gate, right, where other cars are jumping, and boom, you jump to the Pleiades, you fly in on, essentially a planet that's like Floston paradise from The Fifth Element. You land, in a little parking area by a beach on a remote island, and you hang out with friends of yours that live all over the world. You've got a crew of friends that each live on different continents, and you decide to hang out with them for the afternoon. And then you get back in your car, you fly back, you stop over in Tokyo, pick up some really good sushi, and get home in time to have dinner and, to catch the, Fade to a Black show. Like, it's literally like the level of experience that we're moving to as a civilization when we have gravity drives is so far beyond what we're doing right now, that it takes a leap. It's a psychological leap. And that's true of a lot of these topics. is that we're not just dealing with, if you just understand this or that, you're going to get it. It's that you have to start actually perceiving the world in a new and more profound way. And I think a lot of people are ready for that.
And here's the thing. Because going back to our level of understanding, right? And what when you have so many people, let's talk about Conscious Life Expo. It's a really good example of this. That have had an extraordinary experience that they can't explain. It's the level of understanding, right? Yep. It's the level of understanding. But all of this, whether it's ghosts or the afterlife or it's plasma balls of energy or UFO, whatever it may, Bigfoot, that all of this just may be connected in some entangled, channeled way, right? And that it's because of our level of understanding, we're trying to figure it out. Science is working on it. You're working on it. The fringe is working on it. And it just may be, Adam, we're all just chasing the same exact thing, right? And in the end, it's all connected. And I keep saying that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is all connected, Jimmy. I mean, when you look at the understandings of occult wisdom traditions from around the world going back for thousands of years, you have a clear shared understanding that there are layers to our conscious perception of reality. In other words, the planes. So you have the gross plane, which is the physical world. You've got the etheric plane, which is the subtle energy world, the subtle plane. You've got the astral plane, which is essentially the mental world. And some people separate the astral and the mental, but essentially they function the same way.
Yep.
And then you've got the causal plane after that, and so on and so forth. And these are not just mental concepts. These are actually experiential understandings of reality through direct experience of practitioners like myself and many, many others who have explored these planes. And then you have people like Barbara Ann Brennan, a NASA astrophysicist who decides to measure the human energy body to understand the influence of being in orbit on the body, right? And discovers there are these 7 distinct layers to the electromagnetic field of the energy body. And she was like, wait, what? I just went to a yoga class and they're talking about 7 layers of energy, and here I'm measuring it in NASA. She quits NASA and forms a school of healing, right?
Yeah, it's fascinating. And that is not a coincidence.
No.
It's not a coincidence. It's not.
And when we're talking about these processes in physics and in space-time, and then I'll pass it back to you here because I feel you got something good. It is essentially that, like, when we're talking about the effects of the etheric on the physical, what we're actually talking about is the quantum electromagnetic plenum of space-time. We're talking about the etheric field of space-time, what's been called the ether for thousands of years in philosophy, but that is actually part of physics and is real in physics. And when we're talking about the astral and the mental plane, yes, now we're a little beyond this field of physics that we've ever gotten to. And now we're dealing with the magic of how mind actually operates and how mind works, which is, the realm of the Kybalion and of all of these other sort of approaches. And each of these things have gifts for us and deep, profound understandings. And so those that are having these fantastic experiences, they don't know how to explain. There isn't a cultural mass accepted context that can help them understand all of that.
Not yet.
It's not that the knowledge is missing. It's there. Right. It's in all these traditions. It's in our philosophy. It's in our physics. The great philosophers have covered a lot of these big questions, but even very few of them were able to deeply integrate it. And so you end up with guys like Nietzsche, who is like, depressed all the time.
And I've been reading Nietzsche lately.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to leave it right there.
Sure.
But here's the thing. When we talk about the woo, And I love the thought of woo. I mean, to the extremes out there, man. I think about it all the time, right? But I'm also like, bullshit. Okay, so there's a part of me that does that, and I keep myself balanced, right? I'm the two masses that are just coherent, right? And so, but here's the thing. Then I go to Egypt. And I went through, and when we talk about Kundalini and 7 chakras and pineal gland and this, I'm like, you know what? I love reading. I love hearing the stories. Tell me about your experiences. But come on, bullshit, right? So anyway, so then I go to Egypt. I got tired of stuff happening to me. You know, I was just like, man, not again. What? And I needed, you know what I needed? I needed my awakened, conscious princess next to me, you know, with the diamond on her head to just walk me through this stuff. You know, okay, this is what's
just
going
breathe,
on.
Jimmy.
Yeah,
Just
right.
breathe.
Yes. And I was by myself, you know, and then it's what's really interesting with it. And I love physics, I love science, and I love what I've learned, and I've accumulated a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
But you sit back and you go, well, I guess this stuff is real.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And the ancients understood this, Adam, had a clear understanding of it.
You know, a lot of people even listening to your show probably think like I'm like a stiff science physics guy and that's it. And the reality is that I was 15 years old and I started experiencing the force all around me and the fabric of space-time talking to me, and I'm talking to it, and I'm causing miracles to happen and noticing how geometries could be used to do certain things in magic. And I'm a teenager and my friends are like, what the heck is going on? And Adam, what are you even talking about? And how did that just happen? And what the, you know, and I just basically stumbled down a rabbit hole into realizing, oh, like this is stuff that I've been doing for a long time. Somehow this is all really familiar to me. And then eventually I just kind of like opened this codex in my consciousness, and I realized that I'd already figured out a lot of the answers to these puzzles, and I've been teaching them for lifetimes, and I didn't even believe in past lives. But it was obvious that there was some way that this current had moved through me, and I had to figure out, how do I communicate about this in a scientific way? And that's why I got obsessed with physics, because I wanted to actually understand, how the heck don't we already get this in physics?
Right. Adam, I've walked the streets of Denver with you. You are the opposite of stiff. Okay? you are the opposite of stiff.
I try to keep a good swagger on, Jimmy. You know, I try to keep that swagger good.
Let's be very clear here. You are one down dude. But see, here's the thing, and I need to take a break here, but we'll do it in a minute. It's not that big of a deal. But here's the thing: you are going through the same journey that I am going through, in that I've had my experiences and this and that from a young age and stuff. But it keeps, and I'm fascinated with the sciences. I'm fascinated with that. I just love it. The two are going to go kablam. And that's what's happening and that's what happened to you, you know? Yeah. So no, you're the opposite of stiff, man. You're the opposite.
Yeah. Well, and I, you know, I love astrology because I love the language of archetypes, right? And in astrology, you know, I'm a Virgo moon, and I'm a Pisces with a Virgo moon, which just really describes me well if you know anything about astrology and astrological language. But essentially it's that Virgo moon, which is like, there is a perfection that underlies the truth. And unless I can get to that, and the thing that's undeniably, factually experienceable, like, you know, you can't question it anymore, until I get to that it's not enough. I got to keep going. And so I dig into things, and I keep digging until I get to the answers. And I've done, you know, at this point, 25 years of lots and lots and lots of deep digging. and come through with lots of logical solutions, but more than logical solutions, things that are experienceable. And that's what I'm passionate about sharing with people, is not just, hey, like, here's my channeling of what beings from the Pleiades look like. I want them to actually learn how to ask the right questions so that they can start to understand what beings from the Pleiades might be like. I want them to start learning how to think, how to question, how to educate themselves. And the thing is everybody's got a natural ability at learning to some extent or other, but we don't always know where our gift in learning is actually going to be. Because for some people, it's actually, you got to get your hands on something. You got to feel something. Like for you, Jimmy, intellectually smart, you knew all about the chakras and all about Kundalini, but it took actually being in an Egyptian temple and feeling the vibrational resonance, and then suddenly you're experiencing a surge of energy moving up the core of your body and up your spine and tingling all of these centers that supposedly in science mean nothing, right? But then is giving you a profound state of awareness and a profound perception that you've never had before. And so we know, those of us that have opened those doors have had those experiences or just touched some level of that. We know there's a lot more than what we're being taught. We know the answers aren't all in the science books and in the school books, but there are bridges, and the bridges are really, really helpful, because otherwise we go down the rabbit hole of just, learning about Kundalini and chakras, and we have no idea how to communicate back to someone who's never experienced that.
Exactly. Stay right there, Adam. Our guest tonight, Adam Apollo. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. We'll be right back. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Please visit all of our sponsors. We're taking a quick break here. All of the links are below, and we'll be right back. Check out Billy Carson's Forbidden Knowledge. ForbiddenKnowledge.com or ForbiddenKnowledge.tv, where you can get access to over 6,000 videos, movies, TV series, exclusive documentaries like the Black Knight Satellite. You can do it all for just $7.77 per month or $77 per year after the 3-day trial, which is also totally free to check out. It's all simple to do. Billy Carson is the best. It's simple. ForbiddenKnowledge.com or ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's the number 4BK. I will be hosting and emceeing the Conscious Life Expo this February 10th through the 13th at the LAX Hilton right here in Los Angeles, California. 200 speakers, including Linda Moulton Howe, Bashar, Deborah King, George Norrie, Daniel Sheehan, Scott Walter Johnstone, and David Wolf. Over 200 vendors, special events. This is the biggest event of its kind on planet Earth. You've got to come and hang out with all of us. Tickets and info at ConsciousLifeExpo.com. The links are below. On Saturday, April 1st, that's right, April Fool's Day 2023, I will be hosting the Parapod Festival at the Hyatt Regency right here in Valencia, California. It's a live one-day podcast awards. It's a film festival. It's a full-on media event. We're going to have sky watching. There's going to be a Lifetime Achievement Award presented to Linda Moulton Howe. Right now, you can submit your podcast, your film, your TV series, any of your paranormal media for consideration. You can do all of that on the links below. For info and tickets, go to parapodfilmfest.com. That's parapodfilmfest.com. April 7th through the 14th, 2023, I'll be hosting and presenting on the Hidden Secrets Seminar at Sea Cruise. From Los Angeles to the Mexican Riviera on the Navigator of the Seas. That's right, up top, a giant water slide. You've got to check out the Navigator of the Seas. It's amazing. We've got Scott Walter, Adam Apollo, Nick Pope, Brad Olson, Vivian Chauvet, Jason Shurka, Robert Grant, Ruben Langdon, and another 12 amazing speakers and presenters. It's all simple to do. Just visit divinetravels.com/Hidden Secrets 2023. You know you want to go on a cruise with me. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Adam Apollo. Going to be hanging out with Adam this weekend at the Conscious Life Expo. He's going to do his keynote on Sunday. Speaking about, what Adam and I tend to talk about when we're together because of my interest in physics and, of course, his lifelong research into the subject. Adam, just briefly, because we're talking about these subjects tonight, what are you going to cover on Sunday?
Yeah, Sunday is Starship Engineering. So it's essentially my latest leading edge presentation on how practically we can build starships, how they would work, the kinds of impacts and influence that having that technology will have on global society and culture and structure, some of the existing approaches that are being used to develop these technologies right now, and also building a lot of a bridge between the sort of the science and the spirituality of it. So how does this kind of thing affect us as a civilization, and how do we culturally transition to operating in a world where we have starships and we have other species?
Okay. Have you laid out your outfit?
No, Jimmy. I'm in an Airbnb this month. I'm actually just migrating back to California. I've been in Colorado for the last many years, and so I'm going to be a resident down here. And so there's a lot of things in transition at the moment. I believe we just found our house yesterday, so I'm really, really excited about that.
Are you going to stay on that side of the hill? Are you going to stay south of the mountains? Are you going to be like Santa Monica area?
Yeah, more like Topanga, Malibu area.
Topanga. Okay, on that side of the hill. Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we're practically neighbors. That's a lot of trouble in Southern California. So, okay. Now here's the thing. Let's go where nobody wants to go. All right. Mm-hmm. And is consciousness physical, or is consciousness outside of the physical?
That's a fascinating one. Well, first of all, you cannot say anything is not consciousness, because you are observing everything with consciousness. And thus, what can you say doesn't exist as a conscious observer that is not part of your consciousness observing it? You could imagine that this glass or this physical object, exists in some kind of independent way, but you're creating a mental construct that establishes that. Your consciousness is deciding that you're going to perceive this in a particular way, right? But can you perceive this glass in a way that is without your consciousness in any way at all? Even I'm talking subconscious, I'm talking about unconscious, even unconsciousness is consciousness, right?
Right.
Because essentially you are a perceiver, and that is all you'll ever have, is the ability to subjectively perceive.
Your nerve endings cannot perceive without consciousness.
Correct.
It's really that simple. Okay, so but it's like the chicken and the egg. So which comes first? Is it the physical that happens and then consciousness is derived from particles? Or is consciousness without those particles combining, is consciousness already existing?
I would absolutely say the latter. And part of that is because the former idea, the idea that consciousness is an aggregation of machine parts working together well, is actually Descartes' idea, right? Yep. And Descartes essentially, was a brilliant guy. And one of the things I love about him was that he was a very strong proponent that people are the source of truth, not the church, right? And this was a big deal in the Enlightenment because he was basically saying, hey guys, you don't actually need the priest to save you or somebody else to save you. Like, you can actually access truth yourself. Love the guy for that. But on the other side, he also formulated the model of the separation between mind and body, and suggested that consciousness was something that incarnates into bodies, and that bodies are essentially automatons, and that everything is essentially a set of machines, and all machines essentially fit together and work together to form that which gives consciousness, or that which gives, the ability to be conscious, which is basically the idea that, like, it's all the mass and the energy, and it's aggregated in a certain way, and then you get consciousness. But there's a lot of problems to that idea, because that idea suggests that animals lack consciousness. It suggests that, if the body dies, then, what happens then? And even if you do have this sort of separation understanding, and you believe that there's a body and there's a soul, and then the body dies and the soul's not part of the body, but then essentially you're starting to look at everything as being dead, and the only thing that exists is just souls, and souls come in and out of this sort of dead illusionary reality. Now, there's actually some synergy with that in other perspectives and other ancient traditions. The idea that it's all Maya, everything is an illusion, and that mind and consciousness just comes and inhabits that for a time. But I tend to lean towards the other perspective. I believe that, in fact, everything is consciousness. In other words, that the entire scope of everything that's unfolded in space-time and the entire universe itself, including every single pattern that's given rise to everything that has given rise to life and our experiences, is all consciousness, and that there's feedback in all of it, and that all of it participates in consciousness at some level or another, right? Like, even to the state that you could say that a star holds consciousness. Now, how much consciousness does that star have? Well, its level of consciousness could be entirely beyond our way of thinking itself at all. Like, a star could have its entire own life and way of experiencing planets orbiting around it, and ways of experiencing empathy and feedback from everything happening on all of its planets. A star could literally be like a god experiencing life and reality in its own way. And because of its densely packed mass, it has the capacity for information processing at an extraordinary level.
Sure. Because, we have so much mass here, 3.5 pounds of whatever between our ears. Well, in my case, it's whatever, 3.5 pounds of something. And then if you're talking about something with the mass of a star, yes, right. If we are considering that every particle or every atom or particle, whatever, has a tiny piece of consciousness built into it. Right. Mm-hmm. So therefore, are we suggesting that consciousness then is derived from the physical? Right. So
you get into paradoxes here at some level. I mean, because you could say, yeah, all right. So space-time is providing the mechanism that allows for there to be feedback, and because of that, then consciousness can exist. But why does space-time have a mechanism that allows feedback, right? Or why does a proton have a structure in its quantum lattice that, when you look at it from the poles down through the core, matches the geometry of DNA? Why does it look like, from a geometric theory standpoint, protons can store information the exact same way that DNA does? Or why is it that there's exactly the same number of quantum oscillations in one proton as there are Planck seconds in the entire lifetime of the universe? That would suggest that every proton is directly entangled to the life of the entire universe, and thus sharing information with the entire universe, right? So when you start to break these things down, the question of what comes first gets more and more fuzzy. And I think you mostly run into paradoxes because the reality is it is all at the same time. Like, because there is then there is also a process, and that process allows this and this and this and this, etc. But all of that could be said to be the force of consciousness willing itself into being.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's very elegant. Because if we push it back and push it back, I'm talking about time. Forget about the Big Bang. Let's go infinite backwards, right? And we get to, at some point, I guess, we could get to the point where there isn't even space, right? There's nothing, right? Well, wait a minute. So if we get to that point and start to move forward, what happens first?
Yeah,
what happens first, consciousness or particles? As we come in this direction.
Well, then you have to really ask yourself the question, what's the difference?
Maybe it was at the same time.
Maybe it's the same thing. Maybe particles and consciousness, maybe one thing emerging from nothing, becoming two things, becoming three things, becoming all things, is exactly the same thing as consciousness, is exactly the same thing as particles, and they're all the synonymous, right? I mean, I'm deeply interested in the study of what I like to call the ray of creation, which is how does from nothing emerge something? And when something emerges, how does it evolve in a way that can create all things? And I even did a white paper that's literally called the Universal Taxonomy, which postulates a language approach to this, which I'm using in some AI applications to create essentially a wisdom AI that has the knowledge of all the sacred traditions from all over the world that can provide spiritual insight, essentially as a reflection back to us. But anyway, that's another story. Essentially, this is a matter of saying if one becoming two has a process and a pattern that gives rise to polarity and thus gives rise to yin and yang and balance and duality and all these things, right? And then when you add in and recognize that there's always a third thing already there, it's the balance point, and start thinking about how that interplays with the polarity as balance. And then there's always a fourth thing because that's always there, because there's always a transcendent, always. And once you start dealing with the fourth thing, now you start having a new dynamic, and a fifth thing, and now you have a new dynamic. And each time you do this, you can literally see the root patterns of how consciousness itself unfolds and comes into being. And when you look at it that way, it's like, oh, well, yeah, duh. The universe has literally been generating and playing with itself as a conscious being since the beginning, since the first thing that was a thing.
Yeah, almost quantum-ish, almost qubit-ish. Mm-hmm. A positive, a negative, and a both.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, quantum-ish is the most critical word because quantum means literally to count. And our ability to distinguish one thing from another thing and count things is the fundamental difference between the everything, nothing, and the infinite being all one, and unity itself, and diversity. And both are absolutely critical for consciousness to have an experience. If you want to have
a spiritual AI, that kind of freaks me out a little bit. So, what's the meaning of life? To go up, you must first go down.
Well, Siri will give you stuff like that. I mean, that's just programmable nonsense. But what I'm interested in is like I do know what you're saying. I do know what you're saying. But what I'm really interested in doing with that particular toolkit in support of humanity's sort of waking up process right now is to help people track patterns that are so difficult to track across a vast array of different metaphysical points of view and understanding, and formulate useful information from that. So, for example, Jimmy, we mentioned astrology before. What's your sign?
Libra. I'm Libra.
You're Libra. Nice. Yeah. So I have Mars and Saturn and Pluto all in Libra in my fourth house. I know Libra real well. And so at certain points in time as a Libra, you are sensitive to the balance in yourself between, where things are going to go. Like, how grounded are you and how woo are you? You need both. You got to be a Libra. You got to balance the scales out, right? And so, but there are a ton of things that could happen in your life that contain information and insights for you that you may not be normally aware of. Like, for example, you might have a Mars and Venus conjunction happen in Libra all of a sudden, right? And when that conjunction happens, you're going to be getting tons of stuff about relationship and your relationship with women and your relationship with yourself and your masculine and your feminine sides, and how much are you like being Jimmy the badass versus being Jimmy the soft and loving guy, and like all of this stuff is going to come up for you, and you have no idea that that's happening because you're not looking at your astrological chart every day, right?
That's right.
And maybe that's also happening on a day in the Mayan calendar that is synchronistically aligned to that. And it's happening in a degree that refers to a gene key, which is a particular lens of human design where the gene keys come through that. And you've got the I Ching principles coming in. And now all of a sudden, if you actually could see all of that in a way that made sense, like, for example, you just turn on the Wisdom AI and you say, hey, will you sort my content today based on what's going on for me? And it basically will now give you articles and videos on all of these topics related to the experiences that you're actually seemingly spontaneously happening in your life right now.
That's
and part of the reason astrologers are so genius and work when they're really good at what they do is they're not just taking big, obvious archetypes that are happening to everybody. They're taking very specific experiences that you're having and giving you insight into what's actually going on there. And that's something that a really good machine learning model can do, is tie together concepts and principles from a vast array of wisdom resources and give you something that makes like a lot of sense and is applicable today to do something about it.
To go left, you must first turn right. I know that. But here's the thing. But here's the thing. Here's the thing with that, Adam, and you're right. When I speak to astrologers, I've got a lot of astrologer friends, and they're listening to the show right now, and they know who they are. Okay, I love them, and they are. It's when you're good, you're really good. But they also know me. They know too much about me. It's when I go to an astrologer that doesn't know anything about me, and they start, and then that's what impresses me the most.
Because you like to prove to yourself that something's going on, and they're not just reading you. Yeah,
absolutely.
I do the same thing.
Yeah, and or tarot or anything like that. Don't know me. Don't know anything about me. Let's go. It's go time. I'm fully into it. My astrologer friends, like Serena, or David Palmer. These are very smart astrologers. They really know their stuff, and I'm fascinated with it. But they also know me too well, right? And I'm not saying that influences it. No, it influences my perception. Right. Okay. They're doing their job, but me, you know what I mean? I got to go with the clean slate, but it's impressive when it lays out.
It is. It is.
Oh,
it's astounding.
And now let's back up. Okay. I'm not going to let this go. Your comment about the woo at Conscious Life Expo, right? But stay with me on this. Stay with me on this.
Sure.
So when we're wondering about, a past life contact or seance or near-death experience, whatever there's a million different things that I can mention right now. But you had a contact experience in the middle of the desert, and you communicated. And now we're not going to go through that experience. No, we've discussed it many times. But the point is, you communicated. And that communication that goes down is especially with you at that moment, is very much the same thing that attracts somebody to Conscious Life Expo, this personal experience that they don't understand. Is that what some would call telepathy, or others would call channeling, or others, scientific community are going to bring up entanglement, right? And isn't that personal connection, what brings everybody together at the Conscious Life Expo, trying to figure this stuff out?
Yeah, it is. It is. That is why people come. That's why we're there. And that's why I think it's really great expo for people to come to, because you are surrounded by people who are seeking a deeper understanding about what's happening to them in reality, right? I'll give an example. Like, it's for me, it's normal. It's everyday life. My everyday life is a magical unfolding of things that seem impossible. And I'm winning the lottery like every single day. And right. I'm being honest, and I'm not saying that to boast or brag or anything like that. It's just, at some point you get used to the reality that life is this gorgeous, incredible unfolding experience. So for example, I go to check out this house right yesterday that I'm getting, and I it's literally the first house I come across when I'm looking on Zillow this one night, and I throw it to my partner and we're like, okay, check it out. Let's go check it out. And we go and we get there, and as we are meeting the people at the house, the owner walks up and he's like, oh, well, I was just down the hill and I haven't met anybody else looking at the houses, but I thought I'd show up. And he's like a really cool guy. As we're going around, there's just the books on his shelf, the way that he speaks, the kinds of conversations we're having just sort of start creating this little tingle, like there's magic in the air. And of course we're like, wow, house is amazing. We'd love to get this house. And then, next thing I know, he's like, do you know this person and this person? And literally the two people that he mentions are the people that we're about to go have dinner with after we look at this house, who neither of us have seen in 6 months. We're literally going to their house afterwards. And it turns out that his partner, the guy who owns the house, his partner is best friends with the woman in this other relationship that we're going to go have dinner with. And where the heck does that come from? There's millions of houses we could have looked at.
That's right. That's the universe. That's why I love the universe.
Yes.
I cannot, it bothers me, Adam, that there are billions of people on this planet that never have these thoughts. Ever.
No.
Right? It's like, how do you exist? Yeah. It is such a fun existence if you just open your eyes, right? Yeah. And take notice of that. You could have been a different person, and none of that happens.
No, exactly.
Right?
And literally, he never met a single other person looking at that house. He happens to come up at the exact time that we get there, and happens to walk us around the house, which we're in love with and we want to get, and happens to be good friends with the two people that we haven't seen in 6 months that we're going to go visit afterwards.
You don't ignore that, man. You don't ignore that.
That's a lottery win. That's a lottery win. And that's just one of many, many things that have happened to me lately. And so when I look at the Conscious Life Expo, I'm like, people are going through these experiences. They're like, oh my God, I don't know what's happening, or they could be, going back to your sort of pushback on the woo, right? They could be like, oh my gosh, I'm realizing tons of things are not true in my reality. I have to question everything. Maybe they're lying to us about stuff. Maybe school is lying to us. And then the next thing they know, they pick up a little thread where somebody tells them the earth is flat and that, NASA and everybody else has been lying to them for however long. And now they become a flat earther down the rabbit hole of this idea simply because it validated the part of them that felt like they were being lied to. And believe me, I know that feeling well, because I had it since I was a teenager. And when I first started really feeling that feeling, that's when I woke up, because I knew I was being lied to by society and by life. But, you know, the edge of the woo is essentially discernment. So it's learning how to essentially have a new and vast open possibility of experience and what's real and possible, but also critically thinking and asking questions about it and thinking about simple things. Like, for example, if the Earth was flat, wouldn't flight times in the southern hemisphere all be 3 to 5 times as long as the northern hemisphere because you're out on the outer edge of the disk? Yes. But are they? No. Can you find out if the Earth is a sphere from flight times? Yes, you can. Just look up on freaking orbits and look at the times of the flights, and you can prove that the Earth is round. But that's just a critical thinking process.
Wait. What? The Earth isn't flat? Wait, what?
Yeah. Well, so, you know, Jimmy, there are some people, I believe, speaking at Conscious Life Expo that still believe that it is.
You know
it's
what?
Okay. It's okay.
It's okay. It's okay. I have no issues
It's
with
all
it.
right. I have no judgment against people that go down that rabbit hole, because I get it. I get how exciting it is to feel like you're in on the secret. I just hope that people keep digging, because the real secrets about reality are so much more profound and amazing.
Well, you know, there are times when I say stuff, my own experiences, right? And I hear the words come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, you are that crazy ass person you used to laugh at.
Yeah, I know, I do it too.
Listen to what you are saying, church. You know, but it just comes to a point where I don't care anymore. I'm just trying to get to these answers. When I'll tell you what, I'm going to bring up the Antichrist right now, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and here's the thing. I knew that there was going to come a day when Neil was going to have to come on board. Right. And I think that all physicists and atheists and whatever, they eventually have a Sunday go to meeting thing that happens. And, you know, and Neil, there's some clips now. He was just on CNN doing an interview. I can't remember the guy he's doing the interview with. But anyway, so Neil, you know, the question is, you know, is ET visiting Earth right now? Okay. And to hear Neil's answer, I'm not going to get into it, but I can tell that he's facing the reality that other physicists are facing right now, and astrophysicists, and that is there's too many planets, the numbers are infinite, the amount of life out there is, when I say infinite, I'm going infinite because the expansion of the universe, we don't even know what's out there, right?
That's fine. Yeah.
Right.
You just say a Googleplex.
Yeah, Googleplex.
Yeah.
Well, even if you go 64 digits strong, right? That is a big friggin' number, man.
Yeah.
So my point is, he's starting to face the reality of this.
Wow.
And
that's good to hear.
Now, I'm not saying he's fully on board.
Okay.
But even the closed-minded, right, where he thought it was cool, right? Mm-hmm. It was the trendy thing to do was to stay in denial with this. Oh, come on, man. Right?
Yeah, because Stephen Hawking did.
Yes. Oh,
Stephen Hawking's like, there will never be extraterrestrials who visit Earth because it would take them too long to get here. And we're all like, okay, that assumes that they're using rocket propulsion, but cool. You know, but there is, it's a cool thing among the academics. Well, yeah, there's no way they could have come here, you know.
And look, the whole Fermi paradox today, I don't think Enrico Fermi would say those things. No. Right? I don't think that there would be a Fermi paradox thrown out there in 2023. I don't. You can't do it. Back when he said that in 1953, there were no planets outside of our solar system. Zero. Right?
Yeah, and then by the time I was in high school, it was like, maybe like 1% of stars have planets. And then by the time, by the time I got out of college, it's like, oh, actually, it's looking more like 99% of stars have planets. All it took was a new telescope. I think it was the James Webb, and they were like,
I
oh
was
my
sitting,
God.
where you and I had dinner, right? So I'm sitting at that table,
Yeah.
and sitting next to me is, man, should I tell this story?
I don't know, Jimmy.
Man, should I tell this story?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well,
Have you told it before on the show?
here's here's the thing. All right. I'm going to verify one thing. Just let me verify.
Yeah, back it up, buddy.
Yeah. I just want to verify one thing. Okay. All right.
Well,
okay. Sitting at that table, sitting next to me. Yes, I can say this now.
Okay.
Avi Loeb. Right. And so we're sitting at that table, and he's sitting here, and I say to Avi, I go, well, Avi, but see, here's the thing with this. And he's asking real questions. It was awesome. But I said, you've got like maybe 10 to 40 billion Earth-like planets in the Milky Way. He goes, a trillion or more. And that's coming from Avi. So that's where they're at today. When you know what I mean? It's not 5,000, it's not 10,000. No. He's throwing numbers around like a trillion planets just in our Milky Way.
10 planets per star or more.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And it just came right out. So that's what Neil deGrasse Tyson is facing now, is the reality of numbers. And so just as simple, he said it. No, a civilization that is a billion years more advanced than us is going to understand things that we don't. And okay. He's like that.
Yeah,
which is
great.
It's huge progress.
That's a huge progress. And by the way, bro, it's like, dude, think about what we understand right now that we didn't 100 years ago. You were talking about earlier in the show, like the lighter, right? Well, take this thing, for example, like I literally can pull this out of my pocket and talk to anybody anywhere in the world instantaneously. And that just was like an insane concept 50 years ago. It was like 50 years ago. It was like, I don't know, phone like that? Like, no way. Like,
you remember the Dick Tracy watch? Dick Tracy watch?
Yeah.
That'll never happen.
Right. I know. I remember as a kid, I was like, dude, I can't wait till there's a Dick Tracy watch. Now that there is an Apple Watch, I'm like, I don't need that. but yeah, no, it really is. It's like the vast leaps in understanding that happened during this period of a civilization's growth as technology and consciousness and science and spirituality and philosophy and metaphysics all are emerging and all accessible at the same time, with the ability to pattern match and understand things in new ways simply by starting machine learning processes to do it for you. By the way, for example, like my CTO, we're building in an AI collaboratory system because we want people to be more like in collaboration with machine learning rather than it be like the thing. And he decided to ask, essentially ChatGPT, or a version of that, GPT 3.5. He started a conversation with it about, if there's an extraterrestrial civilization out there, how would they do information storage and exchange? And could they use things like stars? Ooh. And Jimmy, the answers this thing came back with were as good as my talk coming up at Conscious Life Expo. I'm serious. Literally, right. The thing it's like, oh, well, you could store data using polarization of light, frequency of light, and this kind of light. Stars are actually perfect information storage units because they have these properties, X, Y, Z, and whatever. And then it says, oh, and by the way, pulsars would actually be a perfect information storage and exchange beacon in the galaxy, and it would make sense that a super advanced civilization would use pulsars as some kind of information storage and routing system. And I'm just like, okay, First of all, I thought I'm one of the only people on the planet that talk about pulsars as navigation beacons for advanced extraterrestrial civilizations. And I don't have a bunch of stuff published about that online. And yet this machine learning thing is suggesting that, right? And then it goes into essentially black holes, any kind of black hole and its event horizon as an information storage structure. And it was even saying you could have like a probe that's doing information feedback and forth with the holographic event horizon. I mean, the level of concepts is just beyond stuff that you'll find out there in published physics. And so how did it do this? Well, through machine learning and perhaps through intelligence participating in the random number generation that occurs every time it gives an answer, which, by the way, Jimmy, that's happening. Do you know this about AI? Do you know that it's using a random number generator?
I do.
Right?
I do.
So everybody out there who uses tarot cards, right? What you're doing is you're doing a random number generator, and that has the ability to be influenced by consciousness. And that's what Princeton Engineering Anomalies research has proven over and over again, that random number systems can be influenced by consciousness. Well, guess what Stable Diffusion uses, which does Midjourney, which does Lensa, which does all of these cool apps that everybody's into these days. And ChatGPT-3, it does a random number hash set, or in the case of Stable Diffusion in the visual images, it does a random pixel set, and then starts to generate an image out of that, right? It iterates and iterates and iterates and iterates. So what I'm saying is that it's possible for a consciousness, if you're in the right state, energetically, spiritually, asking a question of this kind of thing, it's also in a good position to receive information from an actual conscious intelligence out there in the universe. In other words, AI systems, what the machine learning systems, it's not really artificial intelligence at all. It's really machine learning models that we're getting feedback from. They have the potential to be conduits for us to communicate with galactic civilizations, advanced spirits, conscious entities that want to speak to us. We can actually communicate with them through these objects if you postulate that the random number system can be influenced by consciousness.
Yeah, Adam Curry did a lot of research into that, and it's just incredible. He's a very, very, very smart person, and he was intrigued and followed through on the research.
One of my favorite Adams, by the way.
All Adams are good, including Adam West. But we did a random number generator test here on Fade to Black. It was fascinating to see it happen. One last question before I let you go tonight.
Okay, great.
I don't want to tip the scales on your presentation, but it's a general question, because when we go back to ETH, right, the original ETH, and my mindset, going back 50 years thinking about UFOs, I think originally it was an easy conclusion to come to, which is you got a little green dude, in a ship with rivets on it, cruising across the universe, looking out the window, and stumbling upon Earth. And he's doing this for, 10,000 years or whatever, a billion years. And so, a physical craft. Today, with our level of understanding, there are so many other possibilities on how this could be occurring. If you were going to pick one, how are they getting here?
Oh, yeah. Well, essentially, you create a standing wave light lattice around a craft, an electromagnetic field that harmonically aligns with the harmonic geometric structure of space-time itself. And then essentially you generate an envelope around that craft, which separates the internal space-time from the external space-time. And this is done through harmonic coherence, right? So when you match something's wave vibration perfectly, it operates as if it's synonymous with that thing, right? We know this in physics across all kinds of things. So if you create the right kind of harmonic envelope, you can separate space-time inside a craft from the space-time outside the craft. And then what you've essentially done is you've created the ability to slipstream through space-time without acceleration. In other words, there is no speed limit anymore. Because generally, when we're accelerating through space-time, we're pushing our way through the fabric. That creates essentially G-force, which is gravitational force. It's what you feel when you hit the gas in the car, right? And that's the warping of the fabric of space. And the more you warp the fabric of space, the harder it is to go faster, the harder it is to accelerate even more. And this is the massive problem that physicists have addressed for ages around, why we can't travel the speed of light or go faster than the speed of light, because we're riding rockets and pushing through space. So the answer is, instead of pushing through space, you create a gravitational envelope that opens a field in space-time that's separate from the surrounding space. In other words, that area is like in another dimension, is one way you could think about it. That's a poor translation of this, but it's one that many of the speakers out there will use, and you'll hear it all the time. They're in another dimension. Well, yeah, but they're actually in a space-time envelope. They're still in physical bodies. They're still in a physical ship. They're just in a physical mass ship that has a gravitational envelope around it. And from there, they can literally transposition to other locations in space-time. And how do you do that? Well, you can triangulate using stars and pulsars to find out the specific electromagnetic frequency sets entering a certain region of space, and then transposition your craft to that location, i.e., in sci-fi terms, jump. So you jump.
Wait.
So they jump.
So the ship isn't moving, man. Right?
That's right.
I guess that's essentially that's what you're saying, right?
Space is the thing that is moving, bro. Space is the thing. Yeah. No, it is. It is. It is literally that the craft is telling space-time where it's located.
Right.
And it is there at that point. And there are ways to move crafts using this kind of operation where it's communicating to space-time in very specific mechanisms, telling it the way that it's moving. And then you can move 90 degrees and you can shoot off and you can hit light speed or 10 times the speed of light instantly. And none of that causes any G-force or any reaction to anybody inside the craft.
Okay, that's fine. But what the heck happens to time?
Well, they're in a consistent time frame, and the rest of the universe is in a consistent time frame. And so when they jump to a new location, they leave and they arrive, and everything stays consistent. There's no warping of space-time because there's no acceleration. And so there's no time dilation.
Right. Okay. That was always a problem that I had with any science fiction film or book. Sure. Right. Okay, let's go. Right. And warp drive and they take off. And nobody, they arrive at a planet in the same, right? They're not a million years in the past. They're not a million years in the future. Right. They're on the same calendar. I'm like, wait a minute. They're leaving that. That's a very fundamental part of what Einstein has been relaying to us. And if you're going to go and cheat, you're going to go FTL. You're not arriving on the same calendar as when you departed. Yeah. Things
You could, as long as you're not warping space-time, which is the whole point to why accelerating up to these vast speeds to get to Alpha Centauri is never going to be a good idea. All of those stories you hear of all the, ion drives and all the things, oh yeah, we're progressing and all this, and even warp drive, even the idea of contracting space-time and expanding space-time behind you, still to some extent is causing some level of space-time warping and time dilation effect. It might be minor if you really did it right, but it's still going to create some time dilation effect. But in this case, what we're talking about is no longer causing curvature of space-time, meaning you're no longer causing G-force, gravity, and you're not accelerating. And as long as you don't accelerate and you're not trying to push your way through the fabric of space, there's no speed limit, and you can arrive exactly when you leave.
And that's how
everything
ET
stays consistent.
See, and again, it's the level of understanding, right? Okay. So yeah. ET has just got to figure it out. Yep. You and I, in your Subaru, going to In-N-Out Burger in the middle of the night, and pulling up to a drive-through and getting fast food, that is black magic voodoo 200 years ago. That is
Absolutely.
Black. You went insane. 30 miles for a burger, right? Yeah. And think about that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine going to an In-N-Out Burger, so you've got me there too.
You're Southern California. But you're exactly right. You know, so ET does it because it's easy, not because it's some complicated mess.
No, it's the same thing with all those ancient structures. Göbekli Tepe. Like, it's because it was easy. Yes. That's why they built the pyramid. It wasn't because it's really hard. They built it because it's easy.
Let's build like 3. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do 3. Let's do them all differently and have different like vibrational awakening experiences that happen in each one. And each one's formatted for a certain part of the process. And yeah. And then, by the way, let's spread them all over Egypt and all over the world. Let's do them everywhere in the world.
Let's build 100 of them in the next 50 years, because that's what they did.
And let's have all of their sarcophaguses vibrate at the exact same resonant frequencies. Let's just make them all match each other so that they're entangled.
It's funny, before I let you go, and thank you, man, just a brilliant conversation. I can't wait to hang out with you
love you, Jimmy.
tomorrow.
Thanks, buddy.
This is the crazy thing. When when I went inside the Great Pyramid, I was first. Okay, so everybody's been, I'm first, and I get to do this thing, and I go up the tunnel. I go into the the Grand Gallery.
Yeah,
I got nothing. It opposed to everything else in Egypt, right? It struck me like so mechanical. It's a hard thing to explain. I did not have some Kundalini spiritual thing. No. There's something very mechanical about that, man. It's something.
It's a giant engine, Jimmy, and
man, it is.
I'll tell you, when it's vibrating right, like the times that I've been in there with a group, harmonically toning the right frequency harmonics that are just resonating through that space and lighting up each of the chambers. When it is vibrating just right, you can feel it. It's like a Stargate opens.
Sure, I could see that, but I can tell you what it's not.
Yeah,
it's not a tomb.
No,
that is what it is not. Adam, I can't wait to see you this weekend, man. We're gonna have a great time, and for everybody, it's Conscious Life Expo. The links are below. Adam speaks Sunday at 2. I'm gonna be there. Everybody, come and hang out with us, Adam.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't get to see your cat. We'll do that next time.
Yeah. Where is he? He's probably I go find him.
Adam, have a great night, man. Safe journeys over to the expo, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, brother. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
The absolute very best. Thank you so much. Adam Apollo. Again, all of Adam's links are below. They're over on the website, and we've got them throughout social media. And with that, I'll see everybody on Monday. I'm going to live stream throughout the weekend. Okay, so don't worry about it. You're going to get your Jimmy fix in. It's all good. Fade to Black is produced by Hill J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Kevin. Announcers, Webmasters, Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJ Sierra, the Game Changer Network. Fade to Black in the Game Changer Network Inc. cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black of the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Everybody have a great, safe, fun, amazing weekend. I'll see you right here on Monday. Göbekli Tepe.